Century Superhuman. And I know that the answers are inside. Yeah, I am a 21st Century Superhuman. Now is the time. Come on everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see it when I look into your eyes. We are the same, and we are light, yeah, we are one. And we can make a difference, yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world a lot more fun.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman. This is our 21st Century Superhuman show, and today we're going to talk about hydroponics, which I'm getting really excited about. And we have with us John of Horizon Hydroponics, and John has a wealth of wisdom. He's been doing this a long time. Look at that jade tree behind him. I mean, I just think he's a great master along the path, and he's got really great things to share with us. John, how are you today?
I'm well, Carrie. Thanks for having me on today. I
I'm
really appreciate it.
Yeah, ever since we've talked, I can't stop thinking about hydroponics. And I live in where the soil is very barren in a lot of areas. The area where we are, it's kind of like dry and crumbly and sandy and rocky, and then it rains, and then the rain's gone right away. Once the rain, even if we get a lot of rain, then the soil's really dry by the next day because I think the sun is intense. So maybe I can ask you some questions along the way as we go through your wonderful slideshow, and of how I can really apply this in my life. And I'm sure other people will want to know as well.
Definitely. Be happy to share.
So tell us a little bit, how did you get started at hydroponics? Where did you ever get this idea?
Well, about 20 years ago, I had an industrial accident, and as I was recovering, we started talking about different opportunities. I was working as an engineer and felt that we should venture out on our own, be a little more self-reliant versus working for somebody else. And my wife kind of poo-pooed my idea of becoming a CNC engineer and doing more engineering work. She said that's kind of dying. We need to get into something else. And so we love plants. We love gardening. We started looking at different opportunities. What are things that people need? People need food, access to fresh medicine and food. So we thought, how can we combine passions with needs for people? And we settled on hydroponics. There really weren't any stores in the state at the time, and we saw this as a good opportunity for us to venture out and change people's minds about the stereotypical hydroponics.
That is great. And isn't that the truth? People need food, and they need medicine, and they need plant medicines. I mean, I'm just finishing a video right now on natural immunity and how people can protect themselves at home, how they can build a protective lifestyle. And it's so easy to grow herbs. It's so easy to grow plants they're literally being written up in PubMed as antiviral, antibiotic, bacterial, anti-parasitic, and then just growing our own food. Even looking at things like the coronavirus that's going on right now, and they're closing up borders and all that kind of thing. And it can stop the shipping of foods. And how do we grow foods in our backyard? And I'm like so amazed at what you've told me, that I mean, you can even grow a head of lettuce in a week, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can speed up the growth of all the plants. I don't know about getting a whole head in a week from seed to head, but we can definitely speed it up and make it more nutritious than if it were in a field-grown industrial agricultural situation.
Very cool. So you have some stores. You have Horizon Hydroponics stores, and you're in Michigan, correct?
Yes, we are in Michigan, and we do have 4 locations on the west side of the state, and we've been doing this for about 21 years now.
Nice. And if people see something that you have that they're interested in, will you ship to them?
We do. Currently, we're primarily shipping within the U.S. just because of some fraudulent situations we've had in the past, but we can work outside of the US as well.
If somebody wanted to start their own hydroponic system or something like that, you might have the parts and pieces for them to do that?
Very much so. Yes, we have a lot of
Okay.
the tubs, the trays, the fittings, the pumps.
Okay. And you have a website, is that correct?
We do. It's Horizon, Horizen, hydroponics.com.
Okay. And we'll put that under the video as well.
Great.
And let's go ahead and switch over to your slideshow and look at some of the cool things that you do.
Awesome.
Okay, here we
All
are.
right.
Move us up here.
Yeah, this is a presentation that a former employee and I had put together to take to middle school science classrooms as well as garden clubs, and to be able to talk about hydroponics and show people how easy it can be.
Very cool. Very exciting.
Yeah, so if we talk about hydroponics, the first thing we should do is probably define what the word means. So hydro means water and ponos means work. And so basically we're saying water works. And
Hmm.
in our practical sense, what it means is we're taking the soil out of the growing situation and we're going to put the nutrients in the water for the plants. And so based on this picture, we can get more green foliage for a smaller amount of roots because the plants have everything they need to grow immediately and not have to search out for those minerals or moisture.
That is amazing. And I feel lucky. I grew up in Michigan, so we had relatively good soil, not great soil. And then I've lived other places. I've always had to learn to adapt to the soil and the location where I lived. Like I lived in Southwest Colorado for a while. It was hard to grow things there. Now I'm in the
Hmm.
Yucatan. It's hard to grow things here. So I find this really exciting that we could build more plant with less roots and maybe feed the plant in a different way and end up with some nutritious food and
Exactly.
maybe a little less work. You think?
I think so. I mean, because we're not going to have the weeds to contend with, we'll have less bugs to contend with. We can do it year round. It's low maintenance. Again, we're checking the system maybe once a week. There's less weeds again because there's no soil. We're decreasing the amount of water we're putting on this because we're not broadcasting or aerating the air. So we're feeding the plant directly, and we're being as conservative as we can with our water and our nutrients.
Right. And you told me you have a garden as well, right?
We do, yes,
But you
an outdoor
also
garden.
grow hydroponically inside the house usually, or?
Well, we save that kind of for off-site. We have some additional gardens that we operate. The house is primarily an organic soil garden, if you will.
Nice.
Yeah,
But I'm thinking I could put one of these in my backyard, which I'm really
very much
excited
so.
because
Yes.
I'm in a year-round warm climate,
Oh, it'd be wonderful. I mean, you wouldn't need this a grow light because you have so much natural light, I imagine.
right? That looks like great basil. I want to make pesto right now.
I know, right? We're the pine
Making
nuts.
me, yeah, right on. Okay.
So I feel like you had really hit the nail on the head as you talked about the different environments, the different areas that we all try to grow in. And so if we're going to try and grow inside, the number one thing we need to be concerned with is our light, because without a good quality light source, our plants won't grow inside. So we want to know what kind of light we're working with. And we'll talk on a couple more slides coming up about light specifically. After lights, we want to know, where is our water coming from? What's in
So,
our
so
water?
John, excuse me, do you sell lights or do you just recommend lights to people or how do you?
Uh, we sell lights. We
Okay,
have a variety of different lighting technologies that can suit just about any area that you want to
okay,
grow in.
great.
Yep. And so as we build this pyramid of our indoor growing environment, the water quality becomes the next key ingredient. We want to know that it's fresh, what's in it if we can, as far as its chemistry. Are there any existing nutrients that we can work with? Do we need to filter it out? And then our pH. The pH or acidity level has to do with how fast the plants can eat the food we give it. So there are
Ah,
some key factors we want to monitor as we go along. And then
interesting.
last but not least is our environment. How's the temperature? How's the humidity? If we're going to be inside, we want to get those as spot on as the plant wants it, because that's really what's driving the plant's ability to grow, is the temperature and humidity. So it becomes the
Very cool.
capstone of a good garden.
Very cool.
So fluorescent lighting is an old standby. It's very good in the regards of it's great for propagation, vegetative growth. We can do herbs, orchids, bonsais, houseplants. It's great for starting propagation, like I said. It has multiple colors, and when we talk about colors, we're talking about the actual visible light spectrum, the Roy G. Biv. Each one of the different colors has different effects on the plant's growth, and so we can tailor these fluorescent lights to have the right color spectrum for whatever phase of growth you're in.
Very cool.
And so fluorescent lights are great for small areas, but you really need a high intensity light if you want to grow large plants or in a large area. And so the high intensity lights are similar to like a street light, and they're going to be 400 watts up to a 600 watt, 1000 watt, and they'll cover upwards of a 10 by 10 space. So again, we can grow large plants indoors and reap these bountiful harvests like you see with these peppers here. There's two different types of bulbs that we use. There's a metal halide, and that's kind of our starting bulb. It has more of the blue light, our spring light, and is good for vegetative growth. And then we'll switch over later in the growing cycle to a high pressure sodium, which is more orange light, fruiting flower, end of season type of light. And so that's when the plants will really put out their fruit.
Neat. So in a way, you're kind of mimicking the natural light of nature, right?
Well, exactly. These plants have grown up outside under the sun in the environment in nature, and they've got to fend for themselves based on the conditions given. And in the spring it's blue light, and in the fall it's red light. And so we try and mimic nature indoors as much as we can.
Nice. And if somebody were going to do aquaponics in a greenhouse, say they had a greenhouse, they probably wouldn't need the lights, right? Because they have the natural daylight, or would they maybe need a little extra?
I guess it would just really depend on where they're at. In Michigan, we would want some additional lighting just to extend the day length, maybe not the
Right.
intensity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a more equatorial location like you are, and you have long days all year, and you have good
Wouldn't
sun
need
all
it.
year, do it in the greenhouse. Yeah, no lights.
Right. Or outdoors. I'm going to try it outdoors here, I think. But I know
Yeah,
Michigan is really cold and gray and dark for about 5 months out of the year.
yeah. Seems longer every year, but
I know. Well,
then
you
we
can
come
come.
inside under the grow light. So
That's right. That's right. That, and it helps with that, the emotional ups and downs that happen with that lower light. I think it's called SADS. I don't remember, but
yes, the seasonal affective disorder, definitely.
yeah. So being able to grow plants and have additional light that will help keep your psychobiological energy up, right?
Exactly. It's really nice. It's been a wonderful addition to our home. You know, we've got green plants, so our air is cleaner. We're getting longer days with some
Nice.
wonderful light inside. So it does help balance the moods out in the house, definitely.
Yeah. And we talk about natural immunity, raising our body's ability to protect itself just because it's functioning better.
Exactly. Exactly. So once we've got our light sorted out and we've got a good quality light that we know is going to grow plants, we can hang that, and then we want to go on to our water. And again, as we talk about water, pH is very important when it comes to plant growth because plants like slightly acidic water. So just under 7, as we know, neutral. Plants like the range of 5.5 to 6.5. And
Mm,
and so in the next slide,
cool to know.
yeah. So this is a complicated chart in some regards. Each one of these horizontal bars indicates a mineral, and the vertical bars indicate different pH ranges. And as you can see, the horizontal bars, they get wider and narrower depending on the pH range. And so it's the
Mm,
goal of the grower to find a range that the plant can take all the minerals up as fast as possible. And
neat.
so over time, we've determined that the range that the plants want to be in is someplace between 5.5 and 7. And so young plants in hydroponics, they like the they like the lower ranges, closer to 5.5. Organic plants, and the older they get, they like the 6.5 to 7. So
Cool.
there's some tailoring that we can do, but staying between that 5.5 and 6.5, your plants will do great.
Neat. Very, very cool.
So when we talk about the different elements, there's 17 elements that we need to grow plants. 3 of them come from the air and water. So the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, we get that from the environment, but the rest, the plants need either from the soil. Since we're in hydroponics, there is no soil. And so our nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, these are our 3 main micro, they're the macro needed in the most amounts. And we get into our calcium, sulfur, zincs, and other metals. Those become micro elements. The plants need them, but just not as much. And so we want to make sure they're all there and all bioavailable. And they can come from a few different sources. We have the mineral or chemical-based fertilizers. These are mined and somehow reacted in factories, and they're very bioavailable to the plants. And they're definitely pH balanced so that the minerals are ready to go for the plant. But otherwise, if we want to look at organic inputs, we're talking about guanos, seaweeds, different types of fermented grasses or plants, fruits that we can use. And so ultimately what it comes down to is the source of our minerals. We want to make sure that they're as clean as possible. We can take all of the organic material that we want, but if it's got a lot of arsenic in it, which is a naturally occurring heavy metal, well, we really don't want arsenic in our tomatoes or peppers. So maybe organics isn't the way to go, because we're getting some extra things that we can't eliminate, where some of the mineral-based fertilizers, they're very clean, and they don't have some of these unintended consequences that our organics do.
So are guanos different manures?
Yes, they are. And so we're talking bats, birds, worms, you name it. As long as the animal or insect is a vegetarian, go for it. I mean, so you can use horse, you can use cow, rabbit, chicken.
Right. But you want to break it down a little bit first, right?
Definitely. There's some composting and fermentation that you'd want to do with that.
And then mycorrhizae, that is the some fermented things.
Actually, that is a beneficial fungus.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and that beneficial fungus works with plants. So in nature, plants rely on bacteria and fungus to break down last year's leaves and sticks and roots to make this year's minerals for the plant. And so throughout the season, the plants will exude exudates, which are sugars that they put out through their roots to call different bacteria and funguses in to actually feed the plants. And mycorrhiza is one of the most active funguses that work with most plants on the planet to provide them calcium and phosphorus. So it's a very beneficial bacteria for growing.
So where would somebody like me get some of that?
Well, I mean, I'll say a commonly sold product in the U.S. There's many manufacturers. In Mexico, I'm not 100% sure. That might have to be shipped in from another country, but it's basically, if it's going to naturally occur where there's plants growing. So if you've got any good healthy soil, it's almost like it could be reproduced by taking a small amount in.
That's the kind of stuff they make from, like, when you can get some really good jungle dirt in the rainforest that tree roots are growing in. And
yes,
yeah, that's it. And then some people are combining it with carbon or charcoal.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, cool. Growing, you're muted, John. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, a call.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So the carbon is a wonderful addition, because the little pockets and holes inside of it, biochar is another name for it, and that gives the bacteria and funguses places to hide in between different cycles. So the biochar is a wonderful addition to the soil, besides being carbon negative in absorbing some of that carbon from the air.
Cool. Okay, that's helpful to know.
Yeah, so when we talk about growing mediums, we were just talking about soil. The growing mediums in hydroponics are sterile, inert. They have no food for the plant. And that's how we want them to begin with. We want to come back in with the fertilizer mineral ratios that we want to grow the specific plants that we're growing. And so the hydroton on the left, that is clay pellets. They're clay balls. It's fired like a terracotta pot, and it has many little pores in it that will hold moisture and nutrients for the plants. And so it's a great renewable growing medium, because when the plant's done, we can knock all the balls apart, knock the roots out, sterilize it with a white vinegar, and we're back in business. They can
Do
be
you think
reused
if I
over and
could
over.
find broken pieces of old terracotta pots, I could use them in my growing, could I use them to grow things in?
Yes, I would just say it comes down to size at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Big chunks won't be very good. You'd want it like 1/2-inch sizes,
Right.
like a crouton.
Mm.
But yeah, if you had a bowl of crouton-sized shards of terracotta, it'd work great.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and the next one is rock wool, and it is actually rock. They take rock and they heat it up to about 3,000 degrees, and they spin it like cotton candy. And when it hardens or cools, it is a wonderfully fibrous material, and there's miles and miles of root space in there. So they can cut it into multiple different shapes. So the middle window here, these are for seed starting. These are the little tiny cubes. And on the right, these are further examples. They have a bigger cube on a slab. And so the little cube goes inside the bigger cube that goes on the slab, and the roots will continue to grow out through that. And these slabs are 3 feet long, and the tomato farmers can get 3 30-foot vines out of that one slab in a season.
Wow. So
So
if you started a bunch of seeds in these ones in the middle, then do you like cut them apart, or you just pull the plant out of there, or how do you
uh,
transfer
it,
it to a,
right, it breaks apart pretty easily.
okay.
I mean, for being rock, like you'd think it's pretty hard, but it's more like cotton candy. The
Hmm.
fibers are so small.
And you can
They're
just
very,
pop them apart and
right,
stick them in your
eh,
next phase of growth, medium.
right,
Okay,
exactly.
cool.
Yep. So rock wool is nice. It is just not as reusable as we would like. It
Okay.
because it's rock.
Eh,
It's hard to get all the dead roots out of those little tiny pore spaces.
okay.
But it's a great, wonderful medium. Coconut husk, shredded coconut is a wonderful medium. It comes in 2 different grinds, fine grind like a coffee ground, and then there's a longer husk, longer fiber. And so if you're in a real sandy area, the fine grinds can add moisture retention to that sand. If you're in a real clay area, the bigger chunks or fibers can add pore space or oxygen down inside the growing medium. And actually, this is probably something that I should have said at the beginning. It's not overwatering that kills our plants. It's lack of oxygen at the root boundary. So when we talk about hydroponics and we're talking about putting all the food in the water, well, we need oxygen in there too. It's really about the amount of oxygen we've got in our water that's going to keep the plants alive. Just like us, we don't do well underwater, and neither do plants. But as long as there's oxygen.
Cool.
And so coconut is wonderful, very renewable. We don't eat the outside of it, so we might as well grow some plants in it. But since it's coastal, it does tend to have a lot of salinity or salt in it. So it needs to be rinsed a couple times just to rinse that sodium out of it. And then it's a wonderful growing medium.
Because I've got access to a lot of coconut hulls here.
Oh, right. That's wonderful. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of taking it and rinsing it with some fresh water to rinse that salinity down. And
Right.
it's a wonderful growing medium. And so it can be mixed with the next one, perlite. Perlite is a volcanic rock, and they put it in the oven and pop it like popcorn. And so its whole purpose is just to add aeration or help the soil dry out. However, it's a mined rock, and it is a limited resource, but it works great. And then finally, earthworm castings are a wonderful way to add bacteria, biology, a little bit of nitrogen into your hydroponic system. It can be added through a tea. It could be added directly into the media. It's, again, a good way to add some beneficial bacteria and biology to your hydroponic sterile system.
Nice.
So we've talked about our water, we've talked about our food. Now we're actually getting into what holds the hydroponics, because we need some sort of reservoir to hold the food and water for the plants. And so this type of system is a wick system, and basically there's no pumps, it's passive, and we just have a yellow nylon rope, a cotton rope, a piece of cotton fabric that goes between the bottom of the pot, which is suspended above our reservoir. And that little wick will draw up all the moisture.
Now that looks really easy.
It is.
I think I
It is.
could do that.
So it's really just a matter of having the reservoir, a way to suspend your plants above it, and then
Right.
add the.
So if I was going to do this like outdoors here, would I put in my pot, what would I put in my pot? Would I put dirt in it? Would I put coconut hulls? What would the plant be actually growing in?
It really could be any of those materials, because the plant's going to have access to that water through capillary action. So basically, as the plant drinks from the pot's going to pull on that wick, and then it's going to wick it up. So if you wanted soil, it could be soil, it could be the coconut husk, it even could be the rock wool or the hydrogen pellets.
Okay.
So
I'm
it's
even
that flexible.
thinking I could take 2 buckets. I could take 2 5-gallon buckets and cut one off, or set one inside the other, and have the water cup come up underneath
Yes.
the second
Now,
one.
that is true. You may want to drill a hole in the outer one so the water level doesn't get too high.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're back to our oxygen. Plants in standing water tend to stagnate,
Right.
and they'll use that oxygen quickly. So as
Okay.
long as there's that little buffer between the bottom of the pot and the top of the water, then there's no problem.
Okay. Cool. Very neat and simple. I like it. But
Yes,
there's also
definitely.
other really good ideas here too. I like them all.
Yeah. This is ebb and flow, or flood and drain. And this is the most simple system that we can show that has a pump and a timer. And so we've got our reservoir down below, and it's got enough water and food to flood the top tray, the grow tray. And so that's where the plants would be sitting. They've been removed in this diagram so we can just show the system itself, but the plants would be in the grow tray up on top in separate containers. And so when the timer kicks on, it floods the top tray. And then when the timer kicks off, it drains back down into the bottom. And as it drains, it pulls oxygen down into the growing medium. And so as the plants get watered, they get the food and water. And then as it drains, they get the oxygen. It would do this cycle about 4 times a day. And that would be
Nice.
enough to keep these plants growing nice and healthy.
Now, I guess if you were really, you could potentially even do this. It would be more labor intensive, but you could potentially even do it by hand, right? Instead of the pump, you could pour it in there and let it drain out to the lower tank, maybe.
You could, definitely.
But it'd be, the normal person in the average world probably doesn't want to spend their time doing that. But
right. My belief in some of this is, as we're getting these in, bringing plants indoors and trying to maximize everything, we want to automate as much as possible.
right.
In the regards, the plants will respond to that, and the automation, especially the environment, will help get us the maximum potential of these plants.
Cool. I love this one.
Yeah, the raft or float technique, or I just had a brain fart there, I apologize. Deep water culture is another name for it. So this system relies on floating plants above the water. And so this trough, as you look kind of back in the distance, I don't know, it's 48 feet, let's say, and each of these 4x8 sheets of styrofoam have approximately 48 heads of lettuce or bok choy or whatever it is you want to grow. And so week 1, you would start your seedlings and plant them into the styrofoam tray and set it at the far end of the trough. Week 2, you'd come up and start another tray, and then you'd slide them down this long trough.
And how would you start your seedlings in there, John? I mean, how would you plant the seed that ends up in that thing? Like just...
Yep. So there's a couple different ways. I would go back to the rock wool, those little starter cubes that we had in the center. That's one way. Another way is cotton balls. People have been very successful at starting seeds in cotton balls.
Wow.
And then we're talking like once the plant's an inch tall or so, it can be planted into the styrofoam. basically, as long as the green part's above the styrofoam and the roots down into the water, it
It'll
can go
grow.
right into the system.
Okay.
Yep.
And you had talked about before that this doesn't look that thick, but that you could just build like a cinder block trough and put a pool liner in it effectively.
Yes, this trough doesn't really need to be any deeper than say 8 inches, maybe 10 inches deep. Uh, in production in a greenhouse, let's say there would be air stones in the bottom of this, providing the oxygen that we mentioned that the
What are
plants need.
air stones?
Fish tank bubblers,
Okay.
something that you would add to your fish tank just to provide those bubbles.
Okay.
The plants would use the exact same thing. So anything that could be used for a fish tank would be used for the plants in this situation.
And then is this the fluid that's in here? Is it changed very much, or it just pretty much
It,
they have to
it,
add to it periodically?
it would be added to periodically. So with any hydroponic system, we are going to be maintaining and monitoring our nutrient level and our pH. And so as we're watching that daily, we see the water level go down. We'll add fresh water. If that changes our desired concentration of nutrients, we'll add more. If the pH changes because we added nutrients, we'll adjust that. And so we'll keep a close tab on that.
Very
And
good.
and as people become more experienced, you don't have to monitor it as much every day. You can
Right.
start to go 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 7 days between
Right.
having to monitor the system.
It's just like because I've been monitoring my body's pH, and after a
Yes.
while you get the rhythm. You get, okay, this is where I am. This is what it feels like when I'm a little off. So, and what do you think the turnaround on growing this bok choy is? Is it weeks or?
Well, again, it's going to depend on environment. If we're in a place where there's no cloudy days and we get the right temperatures, it's got all the right food and whatnot, I would say that there'd be a 10 to 15% faster growth rate in these plants. Given the environment and everything is ideal. Otherwise, the main benefit that we're seeing is in the hydroponics is we know where everything's coming from. We know what's going into it. Everything is as clean as possible. There's there's less room for the air. And
So it might be a 30-day growth cycle that would be cut off by 15% or something. 30
right,
to 40-day.
yes, a typical lettuce is going to be 60 to 70 days. And so if we're
Okay.
going to cut 10 to 15% off, we're looking 50 to 55 days
Okay.
instead. Um, it's faster. I mean, it's not instantaneous, unfortunately, but it is faster.
Okay. Cool. I love that. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and the raft system is one that could be done in places that don't have a lot of fresh water or electricity. And so, as I mentioned, the air stones earlier, if there's no electricity to power an air pump, a grower, operator, whatever you want to say, could go and lift up the styrofoam sheet and just splash the water with their hands. And just that agitation will add enough oxygen so that the plants will continue to grow.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it's a very adaptable system.
Nice. Very cool.
Nutrient flow technique. This is widely used in Australia, New Zealand, primarily for lettuce and table greens. And so the diagram on the left, again, we've got our reservoir with pump on the bottom or the ground, and our pump is going up to the high side of this trough. And so it is actually on an angle. And as it's flowing back down to the reservoir, it runs underneath each one of the plants and providing
Nice.
it the water and nutrition it needs.
So that's got a pump, but it's still relatively passive. That's a nice, looks
Yeah,
like a relatively easy system.
it is. And this pump runs all the time. So there's no timer to worry about setting or anything like that. As long as the water's flowing and getting to each plant, there's
And are the
excellent growth.
plants actually sitting on the bottom, or they're kind of suspended a little bit above the?
Well, it is all about getting that thin film of water underneath the plant. And so
Right.
I would say it depends. Some of the troughs have little ribs to make sure that the water can pass underneath. Others do, like you said, and they suspend the plant up just so there's like a 1/4 inch thin film of water.
And those are maybe those, I don't know what those containers are called. They're like a cardboardy kind of stuff that can absorb the water. Is that what they are, as opposed to plastic?
Well, the tubes themselves or troughs,
No, what the plants are in.
it'd be back to the rock wool.
Okay.
The Yep, they would use the little rock wool or an
Oh.
oasis cube,
Mhm.
like the floral foam. That's another one that they use regularly.
Okay.
And we'd seen an herb farmer. He did basil and mint and all sorts of things out in Las Vegas. He had used cotton balls to germinate
Mhm.
everything for his NFT system. So uh, there's a few different ways.
Very cool. Nutrient film technique.
Yep.
Oh, this looks wonderful.
Ah, yes, the aeroponics. This is probably the most productive, fastest hydroponic system that we have. However, it's the most maintenance intensive. So similar to our deep water culture or float raft technique, we have plants sitting in water where we pass air bubbles through. Now we're going to do the reverse. The roots are basically in air, and we're going to spray little water droplets onto the roots. And so these plants are suspended above a little sprayer, and they get misted, the roots get misted on a cycle so that they can continue to grow. And again, it's very productive as long as those little misters are operating. If they get plugged with anything and they stop spraying, there can be some rapid damage to the plants. But otherwise, it's a fantastic system.
It's beautiful. Beautiful,
Very
beautiful.
productive.
What's your favorite? I mean, what do you use yourself?
I like drip irrigation. I believe it's the next slide. It's the most water conservative method
Mm,
of gardening to date, and that means we're going to deliver the water right to the base of the plant. So we're not
okay.
spraying water in the air. There's no big irrigation system like you think in
Uh-huh.
your lawn. It's just right to the base of the plant, and that allows us to save water by not having extra in the reservoir. So basically, anything that goes into this system, the plant will consume it. With many hydroponics systems, you may have to dump some of the nutrients out at a certain point, and so it's not required with this system because it can consume everything that it uses.
Nice.
So,
So how is this working?
so on the right is probably the easiest example. We've got our reservoir on the bottom, and this one happens to have an air pump that goes down the center, and with each little air bubble that goes back up, it catches a drop of water, and that ring that's right around the base of the plant is where the water comes back down or comes out,
Mm,
and then it just runs back down through the roots. And
okay.
so we're going to use a pump to pressurize the water to push it right at the base of the plants. We use a timer so it only runs a portion of the day, or however long we choose. And it's, yeah, it uses the least amount of water possible.
Gorgeous. So the tank with the water is down below the bottom level there, right? And then it kind of
Yes.
comes back and falls down. Cool. Cool, cool. This was an example of mutual friends of ours who are getting to harvest out of a hydroponics garden in Florida, which is um, you called it a vertical system, right?
Yes, these are vertical gardens, and some of the other examples that I've seen are primarily with strawberries, again, smaller plants, but these folks have taken it to another level with some of the other pictures that we'd seen, tomatoes, other vines growing out of these vertical gardens. They make it nice so people don't have to bend over, for one.
Hmm.
For two, the soil-borne pests and diseases that could potentially be in the ground are not getting on the plants.
Mm,
So again, the plants are healthier. We're choosing what they're being fed, when they're being fed, so we can tailor that nutrient cocktail to the most healthy recipe possible.
very cool. Very,
Mhm.
very cool.
And aquaponics. So
Oh, yeah.
aquaponics is a
With
different
fishies.
technique. It's got the fish in there, that's right. So if we're talking aqua farming, we're talking just fish. And if we're talking hydroponics, we're talking just plants. And so aquaponics combines the use of plants and fish. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have our fish tank, and we're going to grow something like tilapia or some other edible fish, hopefully native to our region, if not something that we can acquire to grow. But the fish waste is going to be the nutrients for the plants. And so we're going to take that water from the fish tank and pump it into our hydroponic system. And that's what's going to feed the plants, but the plants are going to clean the water for the fish. And so that cycle just continues to go and go and go. When the plants are done with the water, it goes back to the fish. And as
Mm,
it pumps the water up to the plants clean it for the fish. And so it just goes round and round. And basically the only input we found that is needed is fish food,
Nice.
because the fish produce enough waste through their bacteria, and they can feed a wide variety of plants.
Very cool. I like that. That's very good. And
Yes,
it's kind of the nitrogen and the that comes from the fish poop that the plants clean out. The ammonia is removed. Very cool.
yes,
Like
yes.
it.
They eat a lot of that, and some plants are supposed not to do well, like a tomato or pepper, but in our experience, we've been able to do very well growing just about anything. Definitely the lettuces, herbs, kales, that type of thing. But we've had tomatoes, fruit in
Wow.
aquaponic systems, no problem.
Wow. So over the years, have you kind of tried them all? Tried all these systems?
Yes, I've definitely tried all the systems that I can get my hands on, and they've all got their pros and cons, most definitely.
Right.
And just finding the one that you like to work with is the best one out there.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Okay. And there's your, it's, oh, is this at hhydro.com?
that will take you to horizonhydroponics.com. That was
Okay.
our old URL,
Okay.
unfortunately, but
Cool.
it does redirect. Yes,
And there's your contact info. I'll stop sharing. Good. Well, John, thank you so much. Time
thank
well
you.
spent. And
Definitely.
I just think you're a wealth of knowledge, and I'd like to do some of this again sometime. We'll maybe walk around and look at some plants or do something interesting.
Most definitely. Uh, Maybe one of the next videos I could take from the store and talk about a certain category of one of
Yeah,
these topics, like by light or by fertilizer or some of the soils or
that'd be very cool.
mediums.
Cool,
So we
cool,
can
cool.
definitely get more granular into all these topics.
All right. Well, you have an awesome day, and thank you so much for your time. And I hope that people out there will consider growing things. I think this is almost an easier way than going out and having a garden, although there's some of us who love to garden in the dirt as well, and or
Definitely.
do both, right? And I was just,
That's right.
yeah. And with all these things we're hearing about natural immunity and being able to take care of ourselves and live protective lives, it's nice to be able to grow a little food in our backyard or even in our kitchen in our house or a little greenhouse, whatever you have.
That's right. Knowing where your food comes from and being as healthy as possible is the name of the game. So
That's
let's
right.
take control.
That's right. Okay, remember, breathe, smile, and love. And we shall see you soon. Okay,
Thank you,
everybody,
Carrie.
take care. Thank you, John. Ciao.
I am a 21st century superhuman, and I know that the answers are inside. Yeah, I am a 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. Come on, everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see it when I look into your eyes. We are the same, and we are light, yeah, we are one. Here now, hear my ancient prayer and sing along. We are awakening as one, and we can make a difference. Yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world a lot more fun. But if you're feeling kinda down and you need some inspiration to remember who you are, oh, now, child, please don't frown. You can choose a new vibration, and these words can take you far. I am a 21st century superhuman, and I know that the answers are inside. I am a Century Superhuman. Now is the time. Down and you need some inspiration to remember who you are. Whoa, now child, please don't frown. You can choose a new vibration and these words can take you far. I am a 21st century superhuman. I know that the answers are inside. I am 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. I am a 21st century superhuman. I know that the answers are inside. I am a 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time.